M1 Finance is a powerful tool for investing, and I'm going to use power tools to make a real pie alongside making investing pies within the M1 Finance app to see which is easier and tastier. I've already got a lot of the ingredients kind of pre-measured here and ready to go. I got my mise en place, and I'm going to peel these apples now. Okay, let's see if this works. I mean, not bad. Next. Ooh, that thing is nasty in there. I thought I would need that hammer more than I am. You can choose to put whatever you want in your own pie. Potatoes, pumpkin, apple. Speaking of apple, you could invest in apple with your own M1 Finance pies too. I mostly choose broad ETFs because I frankly can't predict the future, but depending on what you like, what you want to invest in, you can pick anything. M1 Finance lets you pick individual stocks, ETFs, bonds. You can even pick from expertly crafted pies that their own pie chefs make for you. I've seen better apples than this. This would be okay investments if you ask me. These, I mean, I got a big brown spot here. Oh, I just put that in there and crooked. Wow, look how crooked that is. That's not gonna fly. It's like a lathe. It's like a fruit lathe. Now, if this was an investing pie, it wouldn't be very well diversified because you've only got one real substance in there. Mostly apple, so this is clearly like a tech portfolio. You've got a little bit of sugar, something sweet in there, something kind, like maybe that's Disney. You've got something kind of sour and offensive in there, this apple cider vinegar. Maybe that's Tesla, you know, it offends some people. Other people love it. We've got some cinnamon, some salt, some cornstarch, and a little bit of flour. Kind of plain, kind of essential to the recipe, but nothing to write home about. What a delicious mess. So what would the equivalent be of eating the pie in investing terms? Would that be like selling and taking capital gains? Might be. I did not read the whole recipe before we got started here, so I need to do that. We're gonna melt the butter, we're gonna add apples, we're gonna stir it, scrape it into a bowl, and allow it to cool completely. Holy moly, that's gonna take a while. Butter is going in the pan. I've already forgotten the next step. I think it's just add the apples. Spices. Well, that already smells good. Apples. Whoa, we lost some. Hold on, you gotta see this. This smells really good. Also, people like healthy people say that apple cider vinegar is good for you. This smells terrible, but I'm gonna try it. Wow, not nearly as bad as I thought. Apples are about ready for phase 2, which is the cornstarch, the flour, and the apple cider vinegar. It's very watery. Does this seem too watery to you, viewers, pie experts? For the record, I've made several M1 Finance pies. I think I'm up to 4, 5, at least. This is my first apple pie. Is this my first pie ever? I think so. I've made a galette before. Galette is like a lazy person's pie. Puff pastry dough, throw some berries and sugar in there, throw it in the oven, done. But this is like a legit pie. Oh, look at that. It's thickening up with all that flour in there. Okay, I think our apples are looking good, looking slimy, just what you want. Now, they need to cool completely, so we'll put them on this baking sheet. And then I read in the comments from some woman who apparently has made many pies that if you put a cast iron skillet in the oven upside down and let it preheat, the bottom of your pie bakes better. Let's see. I am relatively impatient, so we're gonna use a fan to cool off this apple compote. This is not in the instructions. Okay, while the fan is blowing, let's see if we can't get a jump start on this crust situation. So I have 2 pie crusts, but I have no top of the pie. You know how an apple pie normally has that top with like the little slits cut in it and all that? I don't have that. So I'm gonna use one on the bottom and one on the top and make like a crusty apple sandwich pie. Like this, like a flying saucer. Come with me. Got a crust for the bottom. It's a prettier one. Crust for the top. How do we get this out of here? Yeah, it's kind of coming. Sorta. Kinda. Oh, that didn't feel good. Come on, little crusty. Oh no. Can I cut the metal part off? Hiya! I have cut the tin. Oh, that's not good. This is a train wreck. Got a little bit too impatient and I took this out before it was ready. And that's what people will do with their investing. They're like, hey, I want to take this money out because it's gone down in value, because they really want the money, whatever. But by and large, studies show that if we leave it alone, we'll do better. Don't withdraw your investments, just leave them in there. Yikes. Okay, do I like rolling pin this back together or do I just piecemeal it on top like some kind of weird, what's that called? Mosaic? I could mosaic it. This is turning into an episode of Nailed It. Well, let's check on the old, filling. Oh yeah, that's cool. All I'm saying is I've never seen Martha Stewart use a fan to cool off her baking filling. Saved a lot of time. Martha, your empire could have been bigger. Who knows? Let's do this thing. Delicious sludge. It's a bit of a low boy. Now we put the topper on. Oh my. It's like a patchwork quilt that your grandma made you. Love. I've got extra crust, so I'm gonna put an M and a 1 on top. For the record, they did not sponsor the video. They only sent me pie ingredients. Little egg wash. Seems like this would just be like a pile of scrambled eggs on top of a pie. I don't know how this works, but whatever. Trust the process. This is our finished product. I mean, unbaked, of course, but M1 pie. Let's get this thing in the oven. And continue to cooking until the interior is bubbling. How am I supposed to know when the interior is bubbling? I can't see in there. This thing cooks for an hour. Sheesh. Thank you.
I love it. I love the pie.
So here's the final result. My beautiful M1 apple pie. 113 minutes to make this, minimum. And it probably takes me 3 minutes to make an M1 pie. But this tastes better than an app, so let's find out exactly how it tastes. Okay, first bite. I mean, it's pretty good. It's not the best apple pie I've ever had. Best apple pie I've ever made. I think it's overbaked. Crust is a little bit ashy. Fall apart in your mouth. Filling is good. Need some vanilla ice cream. Now that we've made this pie, let's go make a pie in M1 Finance. Whenever we're making a pie within M1 Finance, it's a lot simpler because you don't have to preheat an oven. You don't have to get together all those ingredients. All you need is your cell phone. Whenever you open M1 Finance, it looks something like this. And to get to a new pie, I'll go to Research. And whenever I open the research screen, it comes up with this, which is like some major indexes across the top. And it has some news articles down here, which is actually a very nice feature because you don't have to like search around the whole internet to find some news. But what we want to do is make our own pie. So I'll go to this little hamburger on the top left corner, and then you can see there's stocks, funds, expert pies, and my pies. So if I click on my pies, I have a list of all of them that I've ever made in the past. Let's start a new one. Delicious apple pie. Now we have our pie started. Time to build it. And if I can here, I'm gonna keep the proportion of those actual fillings and ingredients and everything that went into the real pie in our M1 pie, just for fun. So as you can see here, it says you have no slices. To add slices, tap Add Slice. So we're gonna add a slice of the pie. We're building it one slice at a time, if you will. The first thing in our pie is going to be the filling. So we used apple for our filling for our real pie. Now we're gonna use apple as the filling for our M1 pie. So what we're gonna do is actually, apple's right here at the top of the list, but if it wasn't, you could search for apple, click into that, and it'll show you some data about the company. Then I'm gonna add to pie. So right now we're just going through and we're gonna click on all the companies that we wanna add to our pie. The next ingredient of our pie, if you will, was sugar. Something sweet, something that everyone loves. Disney, right? It's gotta be Disney. We're gonna add that to our pie. Next, the apple cider vinegar is like Tesla. It's potent, it's a little bit offensive to some people. You probably either love it or you hate it. So let's find Tesla. Add. Next is the cinnamon, and for me, I think this kind of makes sense because the investment that I'm choosing to represent cinnamon is this index fund called VWO. So it's a Vanguard fund that represents emerging markets. Cinnamon is a spice that comes from overseas, and so these are investments that are overseas. We'll type in VWO. We can just add that little plus. You see that plus sign that's now become a check mark? That's the fast way. Next is the salt, and I had to do a little bit of research for this. I didn't realize that Detroit is a place where they mine salt. I didn't even think about where salt came from before now, but apparently it's a major production hub for salt. What else comes from Detroit? Ford. Add Ford Motor Company in there. Next is cornstarch. This is another funny one that kind of cracks me up. A lot of corn in America is grown in Nebraska. What else is headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska, but Berkshire Hathaway? So we'll add Berkshire Hathaway to the pie. Next is the flour, and for that I chose VXUS. Now the reason I chose that is the flour in the real pie acted as kind of a binder for the juicy apples. And in our M1 pie, what it's doing is adding diversity to your portfolio to hold it together in case the US markets aren't performing as well as the rest of the world. Finally, the last and potentially most important ingredient overall is what's going to represent our crust. So the bottom of the pie, that's the foundation that holds all things together. And for that, I chose VT, which is the Vanguard Total World Stock ETF. This ETF literally holds everything. So it's the best representation of the crust. Okay, now that we have all of our slices picked, which is all the different companies or different investments that we want in here, what we're gonna do, as you can see at the top, this 8 in parentheses, it says you have 8 different investments chosen. We're gonna hit done. And so now we have the basic breakdown of what our pie is going to be. What it's done by default here is give us almost equal proportions in each thing, but what we can do now is customize the proportion to be whatever you want. If you were doing this to make a real pie to invest in with your real money, there's a strategy behind that. That's called asset allocation. That's called building your portfolio. For me right now, I'm trying to build an apple pie. I think the filling was equal to about 40%, so I'll put in 40 there. And then what you see here is M1 is automatically telling you what you need to do to balance it out and get to 100%. So since I've bumped up apples so big, I need to remove 27% elsewhere to get to 100. Disney was next on the list. I'm gonna say sugar was like 15%. That was actually a ton of sugar. So 15% is probably accurate. Tesla was actually a tiny proportion of the pie, the apple cider vinegar. I'm gonna say that was only 2%. The cinnamon was also a tiny amount, so VWO will only be 2%. Salt was a small amount, so the Detroit Salt Company, Ford, will only be 2%. Berkshire Hathaway will also be 2%. And there's quite a bit more flour than other ingredients here, so I'm gonna make the flour a 7% proportion of our pie. Finally, our crust, VT, I think that's equal to 30% proportionally of the pie. If for no other reason than it's important enough to be 30%. And you notice that whenever we're adjusting our pie values here, you can either tap in the middle there where the number is and type in whatever you want, 99, or you can touch the plus and minus to bump it up one at a time to get to where you want it to go. There we go. 30%. So now it's a balanced pie. We're equal to exactly 100% overall. It's mostly apple and VT, and there's a sprinkling of other things in there to give it the flavor that we want. We'll hit save, and it's as simple as that. We've made our apple pie within M1 Finance, and if you want to, you can actually invest in this pie because I've linked it in the description and in the very first comment. So if you're curious to see what this looks like within M1 Finance and see how it looks on your phone or your computer, click on that link and it'll send you to M1 Finance so you can take a look at it. Can't say I would recommend actually investing in this, but hey, do what you want. Oh, I forgot to talk about this. This is a really cool thing that they do too. So after you have your pie done, they kind of summarize it all for you and they tell you the number of holdings, the overall expenses, because if you pick some kind of a fund that has really high expenses, that could overall kind of bring up that average, but depending on the proportion of it within your overall pie, it might not affect you that much. So without you having to do all that math yourself, this just tells you in one simple number exactly what the expenses are, which I really appreciate, and it does that same math for you on the dividend yield. Thankfully, this delicious apple pie that I've made only has a 0.03% expense ratio, which is super, super low. And the dividend yield is 1.12%, which is also pretty darn low, but I'm not really going for dividends here. To answer the question at the very beginning of this video, which is basically saying, what was more fun and more satisfying to make? A real apple pie or an M1 Finance pie? Well, for one thing, the M1 Finance pie only took a little over 2 minutes to make. So if you're as impatient and fast moving as I am, you'll appreciate the fact that the M1 Finance pie was done quickly. The real pie took close to 2 hours to make. Now granted, the satisfaction level in the short term, making the real pie is way better than the M1 Finance pie because all I have sitting here is a phone with some stuff on it. I can't eat this, it's not delicious, so the deliciousness of the real pie will always win. But the beauty of having this set up now is that I don't have to do any more work with this. I don't have to worry about this negatively affecting my health. In fact, it'll probably positively affect my health having an M1 Finance pie. And so my expert advice to you as someone watching this video is to do both. Make yourself a real pie, and then as you get to sit down and enjoy it, you can make yourself an M1 Finance pie. The secret comment for today's video is of course pie. What else could it be? If you enjoyed the video or you want to make a pie yourself, then go ahead and leave me a comment that says pie or use the pie emoji. And I'll keep an eye out for these because they are my favorite comments by far. Also, if you were looking for that same recipe that I used to make that pie, because it was pretty darn good, I'll leave that in the description for you too. I really do enjoy making pies within M1 Finance, but if you're curious to know about the other features of M1 and the things that I do and don't like about it, you'll have to watch my overall 2-year review of it, which I've linked right here for you. So click on this box if you want to see my 2-year M1 Finance review.